Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve GF&P grant application for a gun range. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. Council approved an agreement with Civil Design, Inc. out of Brookings on November 21st, 2022, to provide a preliminary engineering layout with cost estimate for a proposed gun range. CDI has completed their work and have provided the attached preliminary layout located on the Kelly property, just west of 4 and 6th Avenue and north of Firestill Creek. The proposed site would be considered an all-enclosed site, which means a bullet could not leave the site. The project would include a 600-yard and 300-yard range with 5 bays each, a 200-yard range with 10 bays, and a 100-yard and 50-yard range with 15 bays each. Total estimated cost is roughly $1.34 million. The staff is requesting that council approve an application to the GF&P to apply for Pittman-Robertson funds for the proposed project. The grant would cover approximately 60% of the cost, or $800,000. With that, I can answer any questions.
Joe, I have a question, please, or two.
Go ahead.
Are there certain hours of operation that this will go, or can they be open 24 hours? And secondly, have we had any input from neighbors?
So it would be up to council to decide which the hours of operation for the gun range. Neighbors would come, so the next step after this is we would need to proceed to get a conditional use permit from the county, because this, as we own it, it's still, this piece of property is still located in the county. So with that, then the neighbors would be notified, and we would have to go through the process with the county of getting a conditional use permit approved.
This is just to apply for the grant money, whether we use it or not.
What's on that ground right now, CRP?
Yes.
Who would
There will be no lights associated with this, so you wouldn't be able to shoot at night.
Who was going to manage it?
Park and Rec. It'd be under the Park and Rec.
What kind of structure? Like a steel building, wood building?
So they're bays. So it's relatively open, but you have earth and berms on the sides. But then you have baffles on top that are constructed with either wood or metal. So that way, the projectile of the bullet, it's covered, so it would hit those baffles, so it couldn't leave the site, or it would hit one of the.
So there really is no building?
No.
Okay. I was just thinking of winter.
There would probably be a storage shed of some type out there eventually, but at this point, it would simply be the shooting areas.
Yep. And there's.
If you ever get up to Watertown, they put one right on the edge of town, where the roundabout south on 81 is.
Yep.
If you go immediately east about a half a mile, that is where their shooting range is located. We went up and looked at it. It would be virtually impossible to get a shell or a round out of the berms and the way they're built. You would have to literally walk down range and try to shoot high and out of it to get one out. The berms are 30 feet high,
Yeah, at least.
roughly. Some of that's to absorb sound. Obviously, we would want to plant trees and whatnot around there to absorb sound, to help be a good neighbor. That part of that will be discussed in when we go for the conditional use.
Is there a chance that there would be more funding coming our way through Game Fish and Park?
So this grant is through Game Fish and Parks.
Yeah, the 800,000 is from Game Fish and Parks. We have received some donations that have come in from parties that are interested in it, so.
We've been told that there's the potential of private party fundraising for this project if it were to go through. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that is a possibility that we could look to receive additional private funding that would be granted to the city.
This is an area in the county where you could hunt, hunt today. It wouldn't be illegal, so you could shoot a gun out there right now.
So, Mayor, do you envision this as selling memberships, or is it just free to the public? Or
Free to the public.
Free to the public.
Free to the public. It would be There would be an opportunity for certain competitions to be held in this facility, which would bring people to Mitchell.
Not to say that we have to do it, I do believe Watertown allows you to rent a certain time that you can
Yes.
take your group, so you reserve bays and those types of things.
Those details we would get worked out as we got into the running and construction and running of the facility. At this point, we're just asking for permission to apply for the $800,000 grant.
I'll make a motion to approve that grant.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Savers, second by Mr. Baffy.
Yep.
Okay, further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Okay, roll call, please.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle. Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve electrical easement with Northwestern Energy. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council, this is an easement with Northwestern Energy that would provide electrical easement across the parking lot, the city-owned parking lot, north of the depot, be on the west end of the property, as shown on the attached exhibit. All costs associated with installation, repairs, maintenance would be on Northwestern Energy. And with that, staff recommends approval and authorize the mayor to sign.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Goldhammer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bath. Barrington? Okay. You two sound alike. Sorry. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Motion carries. Action to approve agreement A 2023-27, easement agreement with Bradley Theme LLC. Mr. Johnson.
All right, so the basic premise behind this proposed easement is there's a small area between the north side of the Fifth and Main parking lot and the existing Northwestern building that's going to be renovated into a restaurant. The applicant, the grantee here, Bradley Theme LLC, is looking to have some area to be able to place their emergency stairs off of the rooftop because they do plan to do rooftop improvements. Those stairs would run off of the south side of that building and then head out to the west to Main Street for emergency purposes. The other purpose of the easement would be to establish a small area near the alley for the placement of their garbage cans. Currently, this is just a grass open area. There's no existing irrigation or anything. The grass doesn't grow very well. The easement itself has pretty standard language, similar to past easements that we've approved, which place the responsibility of the maintenance and upkeep on the grantee. They require, if the situation ever becomes a nuisance or something along those lines, then the easement could potentially terminate at that time if they're not meeting those obligations. So I think with that, we can open up with questions. I'm not sure if the applicant's here.
They're here. Okay, entertain a motion.
I think it's just going to be we got the Corn Palace there, and I think it's going to open up at 6th Street. I'm excited for this thing to open up, rooftop. It's just going to be a wonderful addition to Main Street, and I hope we keep doing this with more buildings. Anyway, I know they're spending a lot of money on it to make Main Street better, and naturally, hopefully they're a successful business. But anyway, with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Savers.
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. There was a time delay when you said it, Mrs. Starks.
Aye.
Further discussion? Mrs. Bradley, you want to say something?
Mayor and Council, Jen Bradley, yes, that's exactly what we're utilizing it for, is the rooftop patio. The emergency exit will come down on that little small grassy landing. It will not be open to the public. You'll have to come into the front doors. It's just for a fire escape emergency purposes only. And then we would be relocating our garbage dumpsters on that south side, and just to kind of clean up that whole area if it turns into a park or parking or whatever the case may be. The garbages and all the gross flies and smell will be on the south side in the 5th and Main parking lot instead of where they are now. We do intend to have patio space on the street level that runs on the north side, that runs the entire east and west part of our current building. Rooftop patio, we are on track. Bids were due last week, and we hope to open up in this winter sometime. Perfect timing for a rooftop. But it'll be great next summer. Any
It'll
other
be a mild
questions?
winter.
Yeah, and a shovel.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Okay, anybody else wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle. Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye. Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement A 2023-28, addendum to the 2023-2025 bargaining agreement between the City of Mitchell and AFSCME Local 2922 for the 2024 wages. Ms. Owen.
Council, included in the packet was an addendum to our bargaining agreement for 2023 through 2025 with all three unions. The first one would be AFSCME Local 2922. The agreement implements wages as an outcome of the compensation and classification review for wages in 2024. That review was conducted in 23 as part of bargaining in the previous year for the contractor that ran 2023 through 2025. The implementation of the new classification plan includes, it's approximately about a 0.3% that the ranges are changing from 23 to 24. The steps that we used to have that would allow employees to progress within the ranges were 1.25%. That's been moved to 2% performance-based steps to be more consistent with what the market is showing other cities to do. There are also equity adjustments for implementing the new plan because those steps are going to be different now. That results in the average increase for those union eligible employees to be about 4%. And then there are reclassifications for each of the unions. I did list those individually by union. So if you looked at AFSCME, you would see the AFSCME covered positions that were being reclassified, as well as IAFF and Teamsters. Other than the specific reclassifications for each of the contracts, everything else in all three contracts are the same. The wages are the same, the implementation of the plan is the same, everything else stays the same. This is within what was approved by council for negotiations, and I recommend that the council approve the addendum to the bargaining agreement for implementation of wages in 2024. I will note also that all three unions have already ratified the agreement as well. I should clarify, the first one that you'll be acting on is with the AFSCME unions.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement A 2023-29, addendum to the 2023-2025 bargaining agreement between the City of Mitchell and the IAFF Local 4166 for the 2024 wages.
Again, this
Ms. Elwine, you want to go through it again?
Sure. I'm not going to restate everything I just stated. I will clarify. The first one was general city employees that are not management. This one, IAFF, is our firefighter union. Again, everything else stays the same. The only thing that differs between the three agreements is the reclassifications of individual positions. And I do recommend approval. The addendums represents what was already discussed by council throughout the course of negotiations for 2024 wages.
Move to approve the agreement.
Motion by Mr. Barrington,
Second.
second by Mr. Goldhammer. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Baskey.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement 8, 2023-30, addendum to the 2023-2025 bargaining agreement between the City of Mitchell Teamsters Local Number 120 for the 2024 wages. This is the same thing, it's just moving to the police department.
That's the only thing I was going to say, is that this would be our employees represented in the police department.
Motion by Mr. McCarty, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, hang on, I'm sorry. Roll call.
Barrington.
Aye.
Baskey.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Motion carries. It's a little harder when you got somebody on the phone. Action- That's all right. Action to approve Agreement A 2023-31, Developers Agreement with MLC Addition Phase 4. Mr. Schrader.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. Mueller Lumber brought their master plan for the MLC addition Phase 4 at the April 10th, 2023 Planning Commission, and it was approved unanimously. The development will add approximately 20 new single-family housing lots within city limits. Plan specifications have been approved by DANR and the city. This is typical to our developers agreements we've been doing lately. They're responsible for all improvements before the city will take them over. This one is a little different as we're doing an assessment for the curb and gutter and the asphalt. Other than that, it's very straightforward, and we recommend city council approval, and I can entertain any questions.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Goldhammer. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith. Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Baskey.
Aye.
Motion carries. Act
Oh.
unanimously. Action to approve Agreement A 2023-32, temporary easement agreement number 1 with South Dakota Department of Transportation Highway 37 Project 2021-45. Mr. Schrader?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council. The next 4 items are linked to the South Dakota Department of Transportation and the Highway 37 project. DOT will be completing road reconstruction from Fair Oaks Avenue to National Guard Road. Improvements will include new street surfacing, lighting, shared use path, and bridge replacement. The city will also be completing underground utility work in conjunction with the project. With this, the DOT is requesting 8 temporary easements from the city. Easement locations are the water treatment plant site, east of the spillway, which is also east of the highway, the southwest corner of Sanborn and the bypass, southwest corner of Highway 37 and the bypass, and the city campground site adjacent, also property adjacent to the lake and Kibbe Park. At the campground, landscaping is going to be removed. With that, we'll be compensated with that cost at $14,687.37, with an additional $1,500 for landscaping. Total amount is $16,191.37. Staff recommends city council approval and temporary easements and allow the mayor to sign on their behalf. The reason that number doesn't add up for the $14,687 to $1,500 is they have a few extra dollars on there for the temporary easements. Just so you know.
Good. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Goldhammer. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Baskey.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve Agreement A 2023-33, Personal Property Relocation Assistance Agreement with South Dakota Department of Transportation for the Highway 37 Project 2021-45. Mr. Schrader.
Yes. This is related to the campground site again. This includes the campground trail sign, flagpole, gates and pole, and also some sales tax that's incorporated with that at $15,922. The DOT is giving the option to either have the DOT complete the work or the city, which if the city completes the work, they're completing it for the $15,992. Staff is recommending that we choose option B and be compensated for the work, and staff recommends council approval.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle,
Second.
second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify. Roll call.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve permanent easements, number 1 and number 2, with South Dakota Department of Transportation for Highway Project, or Highway number 37, Project number 2021-45. Mr. Schrader.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council. These are for two separate permanent easements, both located on the water treatment plant property. One is for a light pole, and the second is for installation of some storm sewer pipe and a drainage way. And staff does recommend council approval and allow for the mayor to sign.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Barrington,
Second.
second by Mr. McCardle. Discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Motion carries. Action to approve release easements with South Dakota Department of Transportation Highway 37 Project 2021-45. Mr. Schrader.
Yes. This last one releases, or basically it eliminates the driveway on the south side of the spillway on the west side of the highway, as can be seen on the screen. They're eliminating that driveway. Basically, people park there and walk across to go fishing. We are adding parking on the west side that people will be able to use, and that's why we're eliminating that driveway on the west side. And staff recommends city council approval.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Goldhammer,
Second.
second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 24, action to approve proceeding with the drawdown construction on Lake Mitchell up to the estimated budget of $3.5 million, the funding to come from the Lake Fund and General Fund designated reserves. I will point out that the drawdown is necessary for us to maintain our wetland at the Kelly property when it is completed in 2024. I will also point out that this is a little tougher to decide because what that actual drawdown looks like depends a lot on what happens relative to the dredging. So with that, Mr. Schrader?
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. So the drawdown project essentially should not be finalized until after we know if we're dredging the lake or not. For that reasoning, if we are dredging the lake, the drawdown project will include a wider cutout for the water to pass through on storms. When we cut through the spillway structure, we'll leave that in place. The larger ditch will be kept there until the dredging project is complete. That reason, as storms come through and rain, it allows rain to go through the lake quicker, which means that the dredging contractor will be able to work more efficiently. If we are not doing the dredging project, the drawdown will be, the pipe will be placed immediately and backfilled, whereas that would not happen until the lake dredging project is complete. Does that make, how I explained it, does that make sense to everyone? And I can answer any questions.
So give us kind of a timetable on the two scenarios, Joe.
Okay, so well, that kind of ties into the next one as well.
Okay.
So hypothetically, if we were to proceed with the drawdown project and the dredging project was approved, with the two dates that are out there, we'll start with the June date. If the dredging project was approved, that would mean that realistically, the drawdown project could not start in 2024, it would start in 2025. Because the timetable of when a drawdown project could be bid and a contractor could start, realistically, that would not be in 2024. If the dredge project is moved to a November date, and we know that that's going to move forward, that would allow the possibility of the dredge project, or the drawdown project to start in the fall of 2024.
And Joe, what would happen to the whole process if the approval is not forthcoming? If the vote to apply for the money to dredge does not come through?
Well, the money's being taken out of what we have, so that it will reduce, the amendment reduces the amount of the loan, the SRF loan. So I think what you're trying to ask is what happens to the drawdown if we decide, or if the dredge is voted down, is that what we're getting at?
Yes, did we waste $3,500,000?
No, because we need that to maintain the wetland.
Yep, so
Why would, I'm trying to picture, we would need to lower the lake to take care of the wetland?
Because we'll need to be able to get in there to manage the vegetation that is taking the phosphorus and the nitrogen out, and also to clean out the sediment traps that we're building into the wetland.
So,
We have to control the water level to be able to get to those, to be able to maintain it.
so the wetland elevation is the same elevation as the spillway. So if you have water going over the spillway, the wetlands would be underwater. On a year like this year, if you put a project together to clean out the wetlands, you could get it done. What the drawdown does is it allows you to make sure the lake stays down. Because right now, if we got, a bunch of rain, whatever that amount is, and water starts going over the spillway, if we have a project going on in those wetlands, that project is now done until Mother Nature decides to cooperate, which potentially could drive up costs of that maintenance project, depending how long the contractor has to wait to do those. Additional benefits are it would allow ease of maintenance on the shorelines for private and public interests, as well as any other benefits to projects upstream that we do in the future.
Joe, how often do you have to take care of the, of the Kelly property? How often do you got to get in there and work on that?
Right now, we're estimating every 10 to 15 years, there will probably need to be some work done in there.
What about the trap? The dugouts are between the Kelly property and the lake, is that correct?
Yes.
And how often they gonna, impossible question.
We don't know at this point.
Joe, you said there's two drawdown options. I don't want to get into the pickle like we got with where we could have put a pipe in the spillway for $60,000. We didn't do it. What's the cost difference to do it the one way as the other way?
So cost-wise, there would be a little less cost involved if we did not dredge the lake, just because we wouldn't move as much earth. But in the grand scheme of things, the earth moving is relatively cheap. So I can't see the cost difference being, a wide margin. It would be relatively cheap.
So you're probably going to recommend to do it. So if we wanted to dredge it. Say we don't dredge it in 2 years, in 4 years we're going to dredge it, or we're going to have to spend more money to get to that point to be able to dredge it.
So if you proceeded with the drawdown project and you decided to dredge the lake, say 5 years down the road after that project was complete, you would basically be pulling out all of the pipe that you put in and opening the spillway back, or opening up the spillway sidewall structure.
But if we did that now, we could do it in 5 years.
You'd be going back and redoing some of the
Right.
work you're doing
Yeah,
now.
you'd
if
be
do-
spending money-
If you wait 5 years.
Twice on something.
No, I don't get that
I think
because.
Mike is saying if we automatically do the drawdown, that would be able to handle a future dredge. So let's say the November or June election, whatever way it ends up going, is a no on it, but then 5 years down the road, the city decides, wow, we got to dredge this lake. Would you suggest putting in the drawdown dredging system? Does that make sense?
That's exactly
Because
what I'm
it's for
talking
the
about.
future, the correct way, so we don't got to do additional.
So are you saying the drawdown gets put in initially or not?
I think what they're
What-
saying, I think I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I get what he's saying.
If you do the dredge, the pipe is put in after the trench had been there to take the whole lake down.
Correct.
So
So,
the diff,
so if you dredge the project, once the structure's already in, the pipe isn't big enough to handle the storms that you would want to handle. You'd have to take all that pipe back out, open it up so you could actually put a storm through the lake, if that makes sense.
like you couldn't put in a pipe big enough to
Right.
handle what,
So-
the way the
Correct.
drawdown.
So the way this is
designed if we
being
were dredging.
designed is to let's say Wessington Springs gets a 12-inch rain and it comes down the creek. This will handle it to keep the lake as dry as possible. If we don't do that, it will be it'll be a pipe in there, and that will not handle that quantity of water.
Right.
Coming down. So if you don't do the dredge now, you'd have to leave it wide open, which impacts some of the stuff going on with Highway 37 as well.
So
The
everyone
pipe is
can't
not-
see this, but
Yeah, I know what you're doing, you're putting a pipe, I just don't want to have to go back in there if we change our mind later to do it.
It would be hard to put the trench there and leave it for 5 years,
I'm with you.
okay?
oh yeah, we would not leave the lake. That would not, because then your lake would be dry or very, very low for that entire time.
That makes sense now,
Yep.
kind of,
Yep.
sort of, clear as mud.
I didn't know we were going to leave it open.
No,
That's just-
Nope.
Essentially digging a big hole.
Big trench.
Yes. Okay. Other questions?
We do currently have this project budgeted as an expenditure in the lake fund. However, there was no revenue budgeted anticipating we would be applying for an SRF loan. This would basically say, we're going to move forward with the dredge either way, and we're going to use those designated cash reserves to do it so that they can, whenever the lake vote happens, if we know we're moving forward with the dredge, design it that way, and if we're not moving forward with the dredge, design it the other way. It just allows staff to continue to move forward because we have the revenue to offset the cost of the project.
right, and another big thing in there is the timing of how that happens. Because realistically, if we don't do the dredge, the same contractor can install the piping and all of that as you're backfilling. Whereas if you do the dredging project, you might actually put the piping and the backfilling as part of the dredge contractor. There are some different scenarios in there that need to be considered, considering how we move forward.
And all of this is happening in the same area of the road easements that we just voted on. So that area is going to be torn up in the coming years anyways, correct?
Yeah, there will be a substantial road project going down Highway 37.
Did you get permission downstream to release water?
So all of that will be permitted through the DANR, so we wouldn't be able to proceed until we have their blessing and follow all of their rules.
That would be all part of the design process.
Correct, and VAR has done, permitting in Minnesota, and Minnesota permitting is way more stringent than South Dakota. So I have confidence that they know what they're doing in that situation.
Okay? Entertain a motion. Motion
Second.
by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Come on up.
Dwight Stadler, Ward 4. Okay, now that that's clear as mud, pun intended. So the intent of this is for a drawdown to accommodate, these are my terms, I'm not an environmental engineer, the Firesteel Creek filtering what goes into the lake?
No, the drawdown is to take the level of the lake down so we can get at the material that's at the bottom of the lake that we need to remove, get rid of the heavy phosphorus, heavy sediment.
Okay,
And
so,
ultimately, we will use that to help maintain our wetland, which is helping pull stuff out of the lake or out of the creek before it gets to Lake Okeechobee.
yeah, I guess my thoughts are it should be tabled because one of the comments you made, or the gentleman made, forgive me, I don't know your name. I heard him say your name several times, but.
Joe Schrader. Joe Schrader.
Joe, okay. So Joe mentioned that if the voting is not approved for it, that kind of defeats the purpose of having this, correct?
No, it's still needed to maintain the wetland that we're building upstream.
Okay. I think, as I understood it, if you proceed with this and then the lake issue is voted no, doesn't pass, then you got to go do double work on this system.
Only if they decide to do the dredge later.
Okay. So why would you start this before knowing what the vote is?
Well, first of all, we need it to maintain our wetland. So what will happen is what the extent or the scope of the work may change depending on what is decided by the people on the dredge.
More money, more money, more money.
Actually, well, I guess I don't know. We'd have to, once we know what's going to happen there, we would be able to tell what the scope actually is. I would suspect it'd be less.
When in doubt, don't go with it. Wait. Vote no. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else wish to address this?
Well, it's me again, Stuart Hanson. I'm against voting for the money for the drawdown, just for the purposes of if we spend that $3.5 million, it's going to be, I'm afraid it might influence the voters to say, since we're into it for that much money, we might as well go with the dredging. And now, I'm all for cleaning up the lake. My dad fished this lake extensively. I grew up fishing the lake. My kids grew up fishing the lake. I know one guy in here knows how much I fished this lake. I fish this lake probably more than anybody in here. I go out to the lake all the time. But to spend that kind of money now before the dredging vote is in, is to me just shouldn't be done yet. So I'm understanding that if the vote, if it's approved for the $3.5 million, the drawdown would be less if the vote for dredging is defeated.
We would believe it would be, yes.
Right? So the money's going to be the same no matter what? Because if you're going to draw the lake down.
No, the approval is for $3.5 million. It would, if we don't use the $3.5 million, it'd go right back into the general fund.
And so for like the dredging, when the dredging, and maybe this is for the next, some being brought up, but the contractors won't be able to tell how much it's going to cost to dredge till the lake is completely drawn down and they can get in there
It
and
would
see
be
what they're.
beneficial for the contractors bidding the dredge project to be able to see what they're bidding, yes.
So it could be 15 million, it could be 50 million to do the dredging once they get in there, correct?
You're right, could be any amount, could be 5 million.
Okay. So if.
Well, you're throwing numbers out.
No, I understand
so
that, but
I'll throw some out.
your numbers were
You know,
already
came in-
25 million.
We actually came in at half the price to do the wetland that we thought was estimated at. So we could conceivably come in at 7 million.
Well, and that's another thing. The wetland, whatever was figured for next year was 35% less or whatever Mr. Baskey said. But you say we have to hurry up and apply for this loan because it might cost more next year. Well, the wetland is cheaper to do it next year. Who's to say the dredging won't be?
We bid it this year. And that was part of what came up. They were allowed to wait a year to do it, which was part of the reason it came in less, so.
So waiting a year, it came in.
I wouldn't say waiting a year to bid it will be cheaper. You don't know that.
Well, that's just my thoughts on it.
We know your thoughts. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this?
Hello, my name's Mark Pitts. I've been part of Friends of the Fire Steel, prior to that, City Lake Advisory Committee, prior to that, Folks 2020 Lake Advisory Committee, was a co-chair on that back in 2009. So I've seen the lake process and the efforts to try and clean it up over more than a decade, and I'm getting tired of waiting, quite frankly. We're coming on almost 100 years on this project, and our lake is certainly not getting any cleaner. We continue to see larger and larger algae blooms. The phosphorus level continues to increase. The cytotoxins continue to increase. So the longer we wait, the worse this whole thing is going to end up becoming. The drawdown structure is a way to work on the wetlands and also put us in a good position to maximize our time to get this project, the dredge project, if voters approve it, passed. And so, you know, we've seen years and years and years go by working through very complicated design and engineering and analysis has just been fantastic. We needed that in order to determine the problem and look at solutions for it. And this is a way to continue the project forward with the wetlands and also put us in a great position if voters do decide to move forward with the dredge project. Otherwise, we're losing another 9 months to a year. And it's just that much further that, for instance, my kids won't be able to use the lake, or other members of the community won't be able to use the lake. I hope that I don't have to be sitting on this committee for 20 years. I really don't, before something actually happens. So I'm in favor of this. I think it's good, efficient thinking, and gives options for voters. Thank you.
My name is Mike Valley. When we're talking about the drawdown and we're talking about the wetlands, we're going to have some way to keep the lake lower while they're working on the wetlands or building them. And everyone talks also about what we're going to do with the watershed. And if we're going to do something with the watershed, we're going to have to put in wetlands. And we're going to have the lake lowered in order to, one, build them, and two, keep them clean. Because you're going to have to take out the, when you put in those wetlands that are going to be absorbing the phosphorus, you're going to have to get those, get the lake lowered, get them mowed, and to hell and gone, I guess you would say. The second thing is you're going to be, as just like when you were a kid and you played in the mud and you built your little streams and whatever, when water is coming fast, it hangs on to its load. When it gets up against something that's going to stop it, what happens to that load? It drops. And that's what these dams are going to do. They're going to catch that, but then you're going to have to dig those out. Well, if you don't have a way to lower that lake, you're not going to be able to get that phosphorus-laden dirt out. Am I correct there, Mayor?
True, yes.
And so to not do this is I don't understand that. We had the opportunity, and I forget how long ago it was, when they were rebuilding, doing some work on the dam, and I think it was $65,000 at that time. We could have put in a drawdown, and we defeated it. Now we're at $3.5 million. Now, if we want to say, and everyone, whether you like the dredging idea or not, everyone says we got to do something with the watershed. And I want to remember, everyone also needs to understand that we do not own the Firesteel Creek. The only thing we own on that Firesteel Creek is the Kelly property. It's not public land. It's people that own the land on either side of that creek. It's their land underneath that. We just can't go up and do it. We got to make deals with farmers. And when we do that, we're going to have a ability to get in and put in those wetlands to take care of it. So if we don't have that ability, all the talk about people saying we got to do something with the watershed, and most people don't realize how big the watershed is. It goes down to south of Stickney, halfway to Chamberlain, to White Lake, north of Weston Springs, up to just southwest of Huron, and then back down to Mitchell. I did some looking, and I could be wrong on this, but it's about 46% the size of the state of Rhode Island. So it's a huge watershed, and we are going to need to regulate that if we're going to be able to get those water or those wetlands cleaned out and used by cleaning up the watershed. So I would encourage you to do this now and not do what we did the last time. He says, oh, that's too much money, that's $65,000, let's not do it. Well, now we're at $3.5 million. You wait longer, I guarantee it's going to cost you more, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of the plans to take care of the watershed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this?
My name's Joe Kippis with Friends of the Fire Steel. I think just getting the drawdown in place follows along with a lot of other thoughts about what makes a lake better. And if you talk to the people from Game Fish and Parks, the first thing they say is, and they told us this, if we get the opportunity, we need to have some kind of a lake level management system in that lake. And so now, if you consider what the DOT is planning to do north of the spillway, I would assume that having some type of lake level control will help them get their work done, as they're going to be working on that whole bank, trying to create a pitch that makes that bank safe to support that road. The other thing is, we have people that live around the lake with their seawalls that are concerned about a fast drain damaging their seawalls, causing pressure to push their seawalls in. So if you have a good system to manage that lake lowering, you can lower the lake and keep those seawalls safe. You can do it with some control. So I think questioning whether we should put the drawdown in, really, I think that's, I haven't even talked about dredging. This is all these other things that require that drawdown. And I just think that it's, that's short vision. You know, we need to be able to look at this farther down the road, because even if you don't dredge, that drawdown is going to be good and it's going to be functional for a lot of years. So I hope that we move forward with this. I know Mark said he hopes he's not working on this for 20 years. Well, I've been working on it for 10, and I'm starting to get tired of it. So I want to move forward with this, and let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, I got a couple things. How low would the drawdown? I'm sorry, did I interrupt? Were you done?
He's Joe too.
Oh,
He thought you were talking to him.
how low would it lower the lake?
Right now, we're looking at 20 feet.
20 feet. And then,
For work on the watershed or for dredging?
Let him finish first here.
so if we lower it 20 feet, how long does it take let's say that is, you're going to lower it after the dredging's done and down the road. How long would that take to get the lake a 3-foot culvert? Or impossible?
Once the dredging's done, you won't take it down 20 feet again.
Let's say you want to.
No, so when you're done and you have your pipe installed, and say you go to open it up and draw the lake down, it's probably only going to be around 12 feet is the lowest you could get it.
So it's 12 feet?
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about,
So
after
when
the pipe.
when it's done, when the project is all done, and we have the pipe in, everything's backfilled, right now, we're looking at a drawdown of around 12 feet.
The other question is, we don't need the drawdown to build the wetland, but to upkeep it.
Correct.
On a Kelly property. But further upstream, we're not going to need the drawdown because it's going to be above it, correct?
I mean, potentially, it could affect if you built wetlands further upstream.
Yeah.
It could.
Do you know where the level of the top of the spillway, if the Kelly property is what, 2 feet of water, 1 foot of water, with the one that's going off the spillway?
Kelly property is probably, 3 to 4, somewhere in there.
That deep? Okay, so then I don't know the elevation levels. 2 more miles west, 3?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. I'm just trying to get this straight in my brain. Thank you.
Okay, John, did you have something?
You said you have to to work on the watershed, bring it down 20 feet, the lake down 20 feet?
No, not to work, not to, it'll bring it down, if we do it for the dredge, it'll bring it down 20 feet to dredge it.
Understood.
We need to bring it down a certain amount of distance to be able to maintain the wetland. That's not 20 feet. That's 12. We would bring, once we finish, if we dredge the lake, finish the dredge, the pipe that is left to draw the lake down will take it down a maximum of 12 feet. We wouldn't need to go down 12 feet, but we could go down 12 feet.
And as we continue the final design of the drawdown, we'll know what that number is that we're for surely can draw down to. But right now, they've been looking at that 12-foot range. It'll depend how big a pipe we go with, the cost for that pipe, what we want to achieve as far as what we can draw down after the project is complete.
That answer your question? Kinda? Okay.
Brian Temple, I'm a member of these committees for about 8 years as well. Spent a lot of time listening to different engineers and experts in the field that have spent, at least 6 years getting their degrees and 10 to 20 years studying projects and working on projects like this. Several years ago, a bunch of us went to Omaha and visited Fire Engineering, and they took us to several lakes that they designed, and they designed them that way to be able to draw down the levels, clean out the reservoirs, maintain the wetlands to get rid of that phosphorus. And it's just to express some of the urgency to act. A week and a half ago, our microcystine levels in the lake reached a level of 35. I think that's what it was, Kevin, correct? 35? The previous high was 29, and at 8 and above, we get into a warning level, and it's a yellow warning signs that basically scare everybody away from the lake, and that's virtually what's happened. It's all related to phosphorus that causes these cyanotoxins. There's about 50 different ones, and the one that we can measure is microcystine. Again, 4 to 8 is a watch. You get above 8, you get into a warning. The highest we had up till a week and a half ago was 29, and it hit 35. And what that does, there was a big article in the paper, and there's virtually, the lake usage is cut down to a fraction of what it was just a few years ago. And when an article like that hits the paper, it just goes down to virtually just a fraction of what it should be and what it used to be. If you were out on the lake on July 4th this year, there was no problem with traffic. There was very little boat traffic compared to years past. We're losing a lot of visitation to Lake Mitchell, to the city of Mitchell, because of the lake condition. So there is some urgency here not to wait too much longer on this to get going on it. The levels speak for themselves, and the need for the drawdown structures to maintain the wetlands and the reservoirs, just like they were designed in other engineering firms that we've just worked with. So we need to get going on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, roll call, please.
Sabers,
Oh, been so long, what's the motion again? Aye.
Goldammer,
Aye.
Dosher, McCardle. Barrington,
Aye.
Bathke,
Aye.
Sharks,
Aye.
Smith.
Motion carries. Okay, action to approve resolution R 2023-53A, amending the election date and finance amount listed in resolution 2023-53. This is an amendment to the original resolution to put it to a vote of the people in June. It moves it to November, the first Tuesday in November, which I believe is November 7th, as well as reduces the amount of the loan to take out the drawdown the 3.5 million, so the SRF loan would be at 21.5 million. Okay. Mr. Schrader, you want to add anything?
So I can answer any questions again for the timing as far as the vote, moving forward with the dredge project and the drawdown. I would also like to state that we do have that grant application with the Bureau of Reclamation. If the vote is in November and the dredge is approved, we still would have the option to accept that grant if awarded, and that's a $5 million grant. If we move the election to June and we're awarded that grant, we would not be able to accept it.
We would probably have to withdraw our application, wouldn't we, if we're going to do it in June?
Since we couldn't accept it, there's really no.
Because you don't want to get a grant, awarded a grant and not accept it. The federal government frowns on that, and then they are likely not to give you any more grants.
Well,
You want to chance it?
be that as it may, the special election, I'm told, cost up to $10,000. That's one of the reasons we went to June of 2024 when there's already an election scheduled. Have we gotten $10,000 to put on a special election?
I did clarify at the last meeting that our elections have been under $8,000. $10,000 was just a rough estimate I gave. When we look back at the budgets, they've been under 8.
Go ahead. We do have somebody who is willing to.
So, Joe Kippis again, from Friends of the Fire Steel. I think at our last meeting, there was a concern expressed about the cost of the election being $10,000, and the Friends of the Fire Steel did meet to discuss this, and with the approval of the new, or the November 23 election date, Friends of the Fire Steel would donate the funds needed for that election.
Okay.
So the cost of the election.
So then it wouldn't cost the city anything.
Is that kosher? Is that legal even? Joe, or Justin?
Yeah, oh, that's close.
Sorry.
Essentially a donation that's received by the city would be placed into a different fund than our elections would be. So because it's not really, the accounting method that you're using, it's not a one-to-one translation. So the city can receive the general donation, it'll be placed in that fund. The elections are paid from a different area, different fund. And the city would not be using those funds to advocate for any particular outcome in the election, so there shouldn't be any campaign finance issue.
Okay.
My other concern is on a special one-item election, I'm told the turnout is very low. Historically, on a special election with one item, it's less than half.
Mrs. Bathke, what's our typical election turnout?
The typical election turnout is around probably an average of 28%. The single item election we had for the indoor pool was also, it was 28.54%.
So
And that was a one item.
And this information came from the county auditor.
From our records, she keeps track of voters, yes. So it's virtually the same.
I spoke to Susan at 4:30 today, because I was curious, after a conversation I had with the mayor, and she told me, and I'm not disputing your guys' numbers, she told me it was 25% on the pool, and the June of 2022, it was 39%. So 14% difference. Even if it's 29% there, it's still 10% there. So it's substantial.
And I guess my response to that is we didn't tell anybody to stay home on either election.
Right, and is she count?
And we're not going to tell anybody to stay home on this election.
Is she tracking county versus city? Because the pool would be a city
I'm not
only.
going to speak for it. I
All
specifically
right.
asked her.
So that might be, but that might be the difference. She may be looking at the June election was a county election, which had 20, or what was it, 38% or whatever it is? Whereas there may have only been 28% of those were city. So.
She knew why I was asking, let's say that.
Well,
And we can do a better job probably, or I guess, I think, of the different types of how you could cast your vote, because there is mail-in, and there is absentee, and there is election day. And I guess that's with any election. I wish it was over 70, 80%, but Michelle sends me the numbers periodically of what our elections have been, and they're all disappointing as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
But we try to get people, we try to get people registered, come out and vote, please. Tell us, give us some direction. And so, given the fact that, in my mind, I'm disappointed at 28%, and if it's less than that, I'll be even disappointed, but it's nothing that we can control. But what we can do is make for sure that we give all the avenues of how people can vote, and maybe that would help.
I got a quick question, Justin. I had somebody send me, and I'm not trying to cause problems, but South Dakota codified law, it's 12-1-11, says you can't take funds from the third party. I don't know if that would affect this, the way this is going to go or not. I don't want to break the laws, but I'm trying to say.
I think that's where Justin was stating, if the city were to receive a donation, it would go into the lake fund, and it would just offset other city costs that we have in the lake. We pay for general fund, or elections out of the general fund, so we would not use those funds to pay for an election.
So you gain in one account, lose it in another account. You also have to remember there's a 3.89% inflation right now, so waiting will cost you 4% roughly, and 4% of 21 million is $800,000. So. Okay. We do too. We've been looking at it. That's Joe. Anything else, Joe?
I have more, but I think you have to see if you have a motion first. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm sorry. We need a motion.
Well, I'll make the motion to approve to move it from June of 24 to November of 23.
Okay, motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. All right. Further discussion?
I'll state the obvious. Friends of the Fire still supports the move to November for this election. And I think for a lot of reasons. One is it's important. We want to get it done. Like we said, this has been a long, hard project, and we were told when we started it was going to be a long, hard project, and it continues to prove that to be correct. The thing with 3.25, I think, Mr. Mayor, you just said it was around 800,000 more if it were to go to 4%. But I looked at, if it just raised 0.5%, that 0.5% is 108,000, just for waiting from, if the results are the same, both elections, just to wait from November to June, it would cost 108,000. So, the $10,000 thing is an issue. That's 108,000. Just waiting from November to June, if that rate goes up 0.5%. And I don't think that's a crazy thought for it to go from 3.25 to 3.75 by next June. And maybe it is. To me, it seemed likely, as a matter of fact. So I guess, for those reasons, and then, of course, Joe mentioned the grant for $5 million that's in place now, and there's possibilities that can happen. Well, if we wait till June, that won't happen for all the things that were just discussed. So there's a lot of costs associated with waiting, just like there was when we had a chance at a $60,000 drawdown. There was a lot of costs waiting on that one too. So it's probably, if we're going to do this election, which we've already agreed, I don't think waiting is worth it. Honestly, it is costly. That's my thought. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, this question is for you.
Thank you.
Was Friends of Fire Steel or any of the other subsequent committees ever brought up to speed on the thing that we heard about in the public comment section of tonight? And what was your group's opinion on the bio dredge as compared to the mechanical dredge that's in the ballot issue?
Well, the documents that I was able to find, I look back, because we talked to people who treated lagoons, livestock lagoons, et cetera, trying to find out what they did. We looked at a lake at a colony that was being treated they felt there was some good success. And we brought in the Solar Bee, which was an aeration. It wasn't to treat the lake, it was to treat an area. It was for us to see if, in fact, it made a difference. And I think the determining factor on that one was we went to satellite maps when the Solar Bee was in the Kippis Bay area. We went to the satellite maps and we could see an area around the Solar Bee that appeared to be affected, clear, but the ring around it was dense. And so our take from that was it didn't really get rid of algae, it just moved it away. And so the Solar Bees, at least its work, it didn't really solve anything. If you had it at your dock, you probably pushed the algae over on your neighbor, and so that was our observation. And so quite frankly, we didn't pursue Solar Bees at that point. We did look at a product called PAC 27, which was, I won't remember now, but it was more like a peroxide mix, and it was actually an algicide that killed blue-green algae, but not green algae, because the green algae had a thicker cell membrane than the blue-green algae. It affected the blue-green algae, and it would make it burst and so on. That was the technical side of it. And we tried that in the bay next to the Archeodome Museum, and then we tried it in the bay farther back in the Kippis Bay next to the road. And we could see some results from that, but it was expensive, and those were really small areas. And the problem we had was trying to measure results because, as we know, the wind switches frequently, so we may have killed this algae in this area with a wind switch that blew it in from another area. And so it was hard to measure, and it didn't seem like it was a good thing for us to pursue. And then finally, we had a proposal for aeration, and we presented it to three of the people that we considered and are considered to be experts. It was Mike Eikenberry, Greg Kipp, and Mike Sotek, who all three were working with Mitchell on trying to find a solution. And all three of these guys said, well, the one, his comment was probably not the right fix for Mitchell's situation. It may be good in the future as used as a maintenance tool. And that was aeration. And the other one said if it was used improperly and if that aeration introduced the deep layers of sediment up into the water column, you could end up with an environmental issue that is much worse than what you already have. And I think Mike Sotek at the time from FIRA, he just says he agreed that probably, because quite honestly, when we first talked to Mike Sotek, we said, we're not very interested in alum, and we're not very interested in dredging because both have a bad reputation in this town. And so we said, see if there's something else that would work for us.
Did Lake Savers present to you guys?
I can't remember the company, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't remember, but I seen on the notes, the timing on the notes was around 2017. So that's all I recall. So I guess to answer your question, Tim, yeah, we did. And quite frankly, it's not that we really wanted to do what we're pursuing now. It's what was left and what would work. I'll guarantee you, we went through when it was the Lake Mitchell Advisory Committee, and the first person that suggested, let's drain the lake and start over, there was almost fistfights. It was, people reacted so strongly to that. And, but in the end, after we looked at everything else, it came back to that, this is going to take a long time and it's going to be hard. Well, it is. It's the most difficult solution. And there's not a person on Friends of the Fire Still that wants to drain the lake. And nobody wants to spend the money to dredge it. But quite honestly, we're convinced that the other solutions just, they're going to come up short. You're going to spend money on them and you're going to come up short. And that's why we're, I guess, sticking with this.
We originally started this project under the auspices it would be a hydraulic dredge. We would not drain the lake. It was after Barr got into their design that they determined that the most cost-effective way to proceed would be to take the lake down and take the stuff out with mechanical means, rather than leave it full and try to hydraulically dredge it.
So I guess that's, sure.
Mark Pitts again. That was very well spoken, but I just want to add one thing is, we know the problem is phosphorus. And even if you kill the algae or the algae dies, it goes down to the bottom, turns back in, that phosphorus is released again. So unless we get rid of the phosphorus, we're not really getting rid of the problem. So the more phosphorus load we can pull out of the watershed, the more we can pull out of the lake. That's what's solving our problems. The algae is really happening because of the phosphorus. It's a symptom of the problem. So, thank you.
Mayor, I do
Yes.
have a follow-up. We do have to keep a record of actual elections, finance office, and this is just for city votes. So off of Michelle's sheet, I just pulled some of the recent ones. 2015 is when we had the indoor pool election.
By itself?
Yep, this is the special election, this was the regular election, but here's been your voter turnout each of those years. So it's really kind of all over the board.
13%.
Yeah, I don't know what was 17, but.
Good.
Can I go? I just have a few questions. The first is, if we're going to move the vote up, is it possible we have another lake meeting for the public? Because nobody's here and nobody watches this except for the few people that already have an opinion solidified. So I'm wondering if we do move it up, could you at least make a contingency where we could get 500 people in the community to do this?
I'm sure we'll have numerous meetings if it gets moved up.
I
I'm
mean,
sure we'll have
could you
numerous
make it a
meetings if it
contingency?
doesn't get moved up, so there will be meetings.
Because I do have a lot, I could address everything these guys said, right? Like phosphorus is our problem, right? So why not have something that's a natural thing to eat the phosphorus, which then the algae can't grow, right? You said that the bacteria, the aerobic bacteria.
But you still have to remove the phosphorus, and that bacteria has to get out of there somehow.
Well, you know how it works, right? The bacteria eats the phosphorus, the zooplankton eats the bacteria, the minnows eat the zooplankton, and then the fish get trophy size.
And then only if you remove
That's the circle of life.
Only if you remove those trophy fish, do you remove the.
Yeah, I think,
Well, it was
Yeah.
his.
I think there'll be definitely some opportunity for some, obviously in the Corn Belt, something else to do that. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you're for or against it.
For
If
sure.
we don't have that, we can't educate the people.
Correct.
Every event we've had, there's always been education going on, so I think the question is redundant at the point that absolutely yes, something's going to happen, because if it doesn't, then we didn't serve the public correctly.
Yeah, totally agree. That's why I'm saying it'd be better.
I don't think it's time for a debate here with anybody back and forth. I think the fact is the public is going to get educated on both positives and negatives of the future dredge if we move it to whatever date it is, November 7th or June. There's going to be times that everybody's going to get a chance to speak on it.
Yep, there will be educational sessions.
And then I guess I just have like two other questions if we're asking a question. The first one is if dredging is our best method for sure to get rid of the phosphorus, why do we need alum?
There are certain areas that will remain underwater. Those are what they're proposing to treat with alum. I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but that is what they are
So if we
proposing
didn't do
now.
alum, the
So,
dredging
right-
would not be effective. Is that right?
No, there would just be certain areas that could continue to push phosphorus into the lake, yes.
So the answer to that question is Barr did a cost benefit ratio analysis to see whether it was more cost effective to remove that material physically or to treat it with alum. So when that hinge point went is whether you actually physically dredge the material out or you treat it with alum.
But alum's not a permanent solution, right? The day we stop it, we're going to have issues.
So, yeah.
Well, it would all depend on what you're bringing into the lake.
Right, it's all watershed dependent, correct.
And then my last question is, what would Bar Engineering give for a written guarantee that we don't have any more algae blooms? If they're so confident that it's going to fix? I mean, anything I ever pay a ton of money, they give me a guarantee. So I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
I don't think anybody will give you that guarantee, and the guarantee you talk of here is not a full money-back guarantee either, so.
But it is a partial.
We don't know that for a fact yet. That's what you're telling us, so.
I'm just wondering if we're comparing, I mean, like I said, I'm all for cleaning the lake. I'm ready to rock and roll, but I also like doing the smart stuff. So if we could have another lake meeting, I would love that. Get an opportunity to ask in front of everyone. That's all I'm asking for.
Thank you. Oh, I thought you wanted to talk, Mr. Lewis.
Somebody reached out to me and asked me to ask this question. I already think I know the answer. They're saying if the Friends of Fire Steel is going to commit $3 million, why are we asking for 21.5? And I think I know the answer, because we don't know what we're going to spend.
Right. The 21.5, well, the original 25 covered 13 million for dredging, 3.5 million for the drawdown, 1 million mobilization, 1.5 million for construction administration during the work. That is AE fees, correct, Joe? $1 million for a fourth sediment trap. What am I missing, Mr. Schrader? No, the jetty's already covered. Oh, the spoil site. Preparation of the spoil site for where you're going to place the dredging material. Okay? So now 21.5 takes that, we're taking out the 3.5 for the drawdown. So that's the 21.5. Those items that I listed other than the drawdown are where the 21.5 comes from.
And I think for two reasons as well. First, we don't know if that financial commitment from Friends of Fire Steel would be in one lump sum or if it would be over a period of years. Often when we have people sponsor or donate to us, it's over a period of 5 to 6 years. So we did show, I think, $1 million on the lake financing originally, and it was used towards the debt service payment over time. So whatever
answered?
comes in,
Close enough?
if you had a lump sum come in right up front, you could reduce the amount that you're borrowing then, but we have to anticipate that that might not be the case, and it might be over a set period of years.
And they indicated to us, and I'm speaking on behalf of you guys, is the $1 million is what they've just, in a very small group that they've got. But until we show the commitment, there's others that will not donate, obviously, until there is a commitment. And then they came back and said, there is the potential of going up to 3 million. That's the numbers that they used. But until we show that the community will say, I would like to vote on this, and I'd like to say either yay or nay, the sooner we can tell them what the community wants, then that's going to give them the direction of can they go out and raise the $3 million or not.
With the potential for a grant, wouldn't, the grant has already been approved, or we already have the grant, or we need to go out for the grant?
We applied for it.
Okay.
So on that original lake financing that you guys looked at, what feels like forever ago, that would have been shown on the top as one of the revenue, was a Friends of Fire Steel contribution, and not knowing what that looked like, it was just spread over the entire time. So just like everything we said on there, it's all an estimate, and things would change based on, you know, what moved forward, so.
Okay? Mr. Stadler?
Dwight Stadler, Ward 4 again. Wow. I'm not going to argue with any of the subject matter experts on biology and the urgency. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So, but I am opposed to changing the voting date. And the reason for it is what I don't understand is, and maybe some of these gentlemen can clarify, is why would you drain and dredge a lake before you filter what's coming into the lake? Because if you drain and dredge and do all of that, and you still got crap coming into the lake, it doesn't make any sense. And this is layman's terms, uneducated,
Okay, so-
non-biological, non-scientific.
So we are, the wetland is being constructed in the next year. The actual dredging of the lake won't occur till dates.
At least end of 2025.
So the wetland will be going a year before we get this done, but I mean, if you wait till everything, you're gonna really push it out.
Okay,
All right? So, and the only property we control in Firesteel Creek
yeah,
is the Kelly property.
I got that. I had a speech prepared, but that was before I heard everybody speak, so it kind of blew that speech out of water. But I will give you a taxpayer perspective here. So if taxpayers were concerned about the exorbitant property tax increase and notices they got this year, consider this. There's an $80 million high school boondoggle, again, decades in the making, like this Lake Mitchell issue. But they're spending the money like there's no tomorrow. There was no engineering and feasibility assessment that was ever done, much less even considered to do a lower cost alternative. Now you're talking $21.5 million for the city to drain and dredge the swampy lake when fixing what flows into, well, forget the fixing part, you just explained that. The $1 or $2 million city council thinks it's going to get for the 8 locks you put up for sales just a drop in the bucket. Plus the water and sewer surcharge and other utilities rate increase pending on the agenda tonight. So when it comes to future property and other tax increases, to quote a line from Bachman-Turner Overdrive out of the 1970s, baby, it ain't over yet. You ain't seen nothing yet.
We are using only the money we currently have. We're not raising any taxes for this. The surcharge you're going to see later tonight does not raise the rates. It just dedicates a part of the rate that you're already paying to go for a certain payment.
That's good to hear. And the reason it's good to hear is because our wallets, taxpayer wallets, are about emptied out, and the only option you got left then is to sell the moths that come out of them, you know. That's it. I don't have any urgency of changing the vote, considering vote date, considering what you presented and what some others have presented. So how about that? I changed my vote.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Stuart Hanson again. I'm definitely opposed to moving the date to November of this year because I think people need the time to understand the new method or a different method of cleaning the lake, which they haven't heard of yet. So I don't think they've had enough time to digest everything that could be done for a whole lot cheaper. And the method, when Joe was talking about the solar bee, he was just talking about aerating the surface, which does nothing. That's the system that I'm talking about, and I'm not sure that's a perfect system either, but the diffusers go on the bottom of the lake, not on the top.
We met with Mr. Tucci. We had that discussion.
Pull all because there's no oxygen down there where there is, so they need to pull the stuff, the phosphorus and crap up off the bottom, and then
No, the oxygen is to keep the enzymes alive so that they don't die off in the winter.
And so the liquids.
And then you have to replace those enzymes again in the following year. Not all of them, but some of them. So you continually add enzymes to the lake. We've looked at this, Mr. Hanson.
I know, but
I know you don't think I paid any attention to what Mr. Tucci passed out, but we had a great conversation with him. Very intriguing method of doing it, but it is not a method that I think we want to pursue.
But when you say we, that's you guys.
Okay.
That's why it should be put to a vote.
My recommendation was it was not the proper way. So
I'm going to jump in here because, once again, the point that we were trying to talk about tonight is an election date and 21.5 million. This debate can happen when we have a town hall meeting or whatever we want to call it. That is that place for it, not here tonight.
So now we've heard that you oppose moving the date. Thank you. Okay? Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, roll call. Mr.
No question. I was just
Bring it to the council.
Yeah, I'm sure there might be some discussion here.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And, you know, I think we all agree that taking this to the public is a good idea. And then we can have, we know that the Chamber Governmental Committee is going to have some debate on it and bring it, and we can have more informational sessions, and we can invite everybody on both sides. And 3 months is enough time. I talked to several marketing people, and they said, you can explain everything you want to an individual, but until it gets closer to the date, and they mentioned 3 months, nobody's going to pay attention. So if you try to start educating people right now, they're going to probably just not pay attention. But when it gets closer to the date, they're going to pay attention. So the onus is going to be on us to make for sure that all the information is out there. And what better time than it is now. The way I'm looking at it, though, is Stephanie's putting the budget together right now for 24. And you got everything under control with that? And the biggest reason is we don't know what way the vote's going to go. You talk to one person, they say it's going to get voted in. You get another person say, no, it's going to get voted down. And that's fine. But what we need to do as a council, we need to have some direction. So we can start giving it to Stephanie, and then we'll have a preliminary budget that will come to us. But then if we move this to November, which I hope we do, then the citizens will tell us, give us the direction. What should we do? It's you guys' city. It's not our city. We're just helping you try to formulate some plans. We're going to put the plans out there. You tell us if that's a plan you want or do not want. And then at that point in time, we can finalize our 24 budget and with confidence move forward to at least figure out what we're going to do. Or we're totally going to just waste a year of being not understanding, what the way the vote's going to come out. So that's number one. Number two is the grant. Joe is very confident that we have a good chance of getting this. I don't know how, if we're going to give the people an opportunity to vote, let's do it when we still have an application alive on the grant. And to me, that is huge. And for the people to show up or not show up, whatever number it's going to end up being is going to be disappointing. But we're giving everybody the chance, and we can educate, we can try to get them registered. We'll do everything we can in our effort to try to get people to the polls. But sometimes, they just do not, but that's not on us. Again, that's on them. So that's the two major reasons. And finally, I should say a third is let's challenge these guys. If they don't have a plan, they can't raise money. But let's give them a plan, see what they can do. And when the project comes back to us with a bid, we can say, not enough money raised, we're down. But let's challenge them. Let's give them an opportunity to go out, and our lots that we're going to be selling, if people see that we're actually trying to get something accomplished, then I think we're going to probably have, that's purely speculation, but you would think that the lot sales would go higher, and then at that point in time, we can look at potentially other land. And again, that's a council decision, but I think it's a great idea. So those are my thoughts of the reasons why behind moving it, and the budget is the biggest one.
I'm going to chime in too. I'm going to obviously break off a little bit from what Jeff said. I agree with what things that was mentioned there. I just take a look at the dates that we have on store for us, and I try to think about what is the positive, the June, what is the positive November. And I can see a lot of the positives through a November election and guidance from the public compared to not necessarily negatives, but the positives disappear. And they are reiterating a little bit what Jeff said from the $5 million grant that stays possibly in play if the public says yes and if the public says no. The SRF loan at 3.25, we don't know what the future is going to bring. We do know that if November would hold us true to that. The drawdown that we just voted on, the timeline of it, obviously a November election gives us some guidance to the engineers and Joe and the rest of the team to put the proper one in, depending on what the vote goes. If it's a yes, we know which one we put in. If it's no, well, we can take our alternatives and do a different type of drawdown. And the other thing about it, it keeps that drawdown timeline going. Now we can do it next year, 2024, instead of literally waiting another year just to do a drawdown that we're going to do, but we just don't know which one. But it backs us up the whole entire year. The other thing, and Jeff brought it up, is the fact about the budget. We're going to go into this budget not knowing where this election's at, but come November, once the vote goes yes or no, we can change our wheels or keep them going the right way. And that's one of the biggest things. As I've been sitting here for 17 years, we need to know each budget year which way we need to keep on going. And this thing is a huge thing hovering over our budget. And does the city want us to keep on doing this direction, or do they want us to go a different direction? We need them to tell us. And if we don't have them tell us before we close budget this year, We have literally have just wasted another year of the city's lives. Let them talk to us. They know their decision, what they want to do. Let them tell us what they want to do. So I take a look at all the negatives and positives. There's so many positives to a November 7 election for us as city council, but for the community to speak up and tell us what they want. I don't see any advantages to the part of the positives to waiting to June. I just have a tough time figuring out what are the positives to a June election compared to somebody, to us get a decision in obviously in November. Mr. Sadler mentioned earlier about budget, about the golf course. He's like going, well, maybe we should wait on this, wait to get the budget things. I can't remember how you said it exactly, Sadler, but it's all a point about knowing what direction you have on where you want to put your eggs in the basket. We need the community to tell us, where do you want to put the eggs in what basket? And we can't do that until we get this election done. And the new November election will help us know that, and we can do the proper things for our community in the right way. I think the other thing, my closing arguments is, we all need to remove our hats tonight. We shouldn't be worried about if you're in favor or against this dredge. It's the fact of giving the public a chance to vote. And that's all we're talking about tonight. November 7th compared to June. We're still giving the public the right to vote. We're going to give it to them, and hopefully we give it to them in November. But the problem we're getting is I believe too many people are wearing too many hats up here. And all I want to do is get it to the public and let them tell the council and this community which way should we continue to move forward. And every time we back it up, we stand in a standstill and we don't move forward in this community. I don't see any negative by a November 7th election. All I see is the positives coming out, and we as a council is letting the public speak for us and give us direction. Let's let them talk sooner than later. There's no reason to drag our feet. We've done it way too long, people.
Okay, anybody else?
I guess my question, and this is probably part of being new, is there a reason why we can't set aside funds in our budget for a future lake project?
We're allowed to save up to 40%, is that right?
You're allowed to have up to 40% in your reserves. We have tried to stay between 30 to 35. That's where we've been the last couple of years on budget. We have, if you took the money that we currently have designated for future capital reserves, we would be over the 40%. You can do that for a short period of time, but you can't leave money in there designated indefinitely that you don't have a plan to use and you're just saving it for a rainy day. We have to have an intended project to use those funds on. We've been doing this one with COVID 4 years ago, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, we're probably pushing that limit now. There has to be an intended use for those funds. You cannot just keep putting money into an account and keeping it.
So we've virtually saved as much as we can. And back in 2014, we were at 11%. And so we've actually built our reserves to about a level where as high as we can go.
So we could put money away this year in this year's budget for the lake.
If you have a plan to use it within a reasonable time frame. We've already
Which
had
June
this-
would be a reasonable time frame, correct?
That's a council decision.
I think that's what Tim was
Yeah,
trying to
that's,
get
I
at.
mean,
was-
and I guess that's where I was at with moving
But
it to
I guess the
June.
point is, you've already had this money set aside for 3 years and we still don't have a use for it. I don't know at what point we're pushing the limit of what we're doing.
I guess, so that goes back to what I was trying to get at, is that the June date for me originally was to do some due diligence and save some money, because I thought, we're talking about $1 million annually out of the fund to pay for the loan in repayment fees, plus the contingency of like the treatments that have to go ongoing. And so for me, it's like, well, why wouldn't we start setting that money aside before we break ground? If we're saying in 3 years we're going to have that money, why would we not?
We've set $4 million aside to date.
Specifically for the lake fund,
Yes.
though.
Why did you say 1.9 when I asked you 3 weeks ago?
funds that you guys
Yeah, there's a lake fund that's 1.5, and the general fund is capital projects, which we figured would go towards the lake at 4.4.
But council has not ever officially designated what you're using that for. You've used it for turf at Drake Field. Actually, none of the golf courses coming out of there. The point is, you can't just keep putting money into a future capital projects and use that to spend as you want. It has to have an intended purpose with a timeline attached to it. We've already had it for 3 years. It's basically our CARES Act money that we didn't spend.
Well, we laundered.
Well, it's not. We use CARES Act money to pay for payroll, but then our
Right.
payroll money that we save, we put into this account to use for this project. At that time, that's what the council then's direction was. I just don't think you can leave it in there indefinitely. I don't know if that answers.
Okay? Anybody else? You ready for a vote? Roll call.
Just a sec.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay.
Before,
Fire away.
just to clarify before we vote, the motion is both the change to the amount and the date.
Correct. You're going to change the date to November 7th, which is the first Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
And the amount of the SRF loan reduces to 21.5 million.
Thank you.
Okay? Anything else? Going once, going twice. Roll call.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Nay.
Goldammer.
Nay.
Dosher.
Nay.
McCardle.
Nay.
Barrington.
Aye.
Bathke.
Nay.
Motion fails. Remains June. Action to approve Resolution R 2023-54, establishing boundaries for proposed business improvement district and setting initial terms for bid board members. Mr. Johnson.
All right, so there's been an effort by Stephanie and some other staff members, including myself, to work through the process of basically renewing and updating our business improvement districts for the hotels, motels.